Okay. All right, folks, we conclude today the 12th chapter. 12th chapter in one word, Beinoni, intermediate individual. Who is this individual? Not a tzaddik and not a rasha, not a righteous individual and not a wicked individual. What does it mean, righteous and wicked? Well, as we've explained, righteous people have complete mastery over themselves, not just over their behavior, but their inner being, which is their mind and their heart. Complete mastery, no urge. A complete righteous individual, someone who has no urge at all for anything that is either self-glorification, self-fulfillment, or just merely enjoyment or pleasure as an end in itself. A completely wicked individual, meaning that righteous person is completely mastered the animal soul, that it's been transformed. No longer it is a natural animal soul. It's been transformed into godliness, and therefore everything about that person's life is towards God, not just in their behavior, but again, even the urges of the heart, even the deep recesses of the heart. The complete righteous individual. Of course, there's the incomplete also, as we've explained previously. The wicked individual is a person who is controlled by the animal soul, whether sometimes or all the time. And then there's different levels of that, of course. The Beinoni. Who is this Beinoni? Well, the Beinoni is capable of, during their prayers, to be so enraptured, such a fiery love for God, that the animal soul is quite dormant. But afterwards, you pray for part of the day, but not a whole day. What do you do with the rest of your day? How does the Beinoni go through that day? Well, they still have some remnants, some impression retained in their mind from the meditation that they meditated upon in their prayers of their rapturous love, which comes from the mind. But they also have the hidden love that's there, which we're going to fully understand what that hidden love means in chapters 18 through 25. We're now only finishing chapter 12. And because of that, it gives them the capability to prevail and dominate over any cravings of the animal soul, preventing that the animal soul can have any control over the behavior, thought, speech, and action of the individual. Furthermore, how does this work in the mind? And this is where the Alter Rebbe explains. The mind, thoughts of the individual. The mind's one thing, thoughts of the individual. So when a negative thought enters a person's mind, that negative thought of the Beinoni, by the tzaddik it doesn't happen, but by the Beinoni, when it happens, it's not willingly. It comes because what do you think about? You think about that which is in your heart. So if it's strong in your heart, then it'll be a thought in your mind, that feeling. So the Beinoni, not having mastery over the heart, meaning the feelings of the heart, therefore will crave some negativity, evil, that will come and be a thought that enters the mind. But that's an involuntary thought, right? Again, because the evil is still lurking, is a craving in the heart. But the evil doesn't have a final say, meaning that the Beinoni will not willingly accept that thought and let the animal soul dominate the godly soul, the divine soul. Therefore, immediately when that thought enters the mind, the Beinoni thrusts it with two hands and pushes it away to avert that thought, and refuses to accept it willingly, to think it, to cogitate it, meditate upon it, that thought. Because if so, the moment you willingly think something you're not supposed to, then you have a stain on your soul. That's called evil in Jewish teachings, because you willingly chose. At that moment, you have the freedom of choice, and that's a big chiddush. That's a big novel idea, that you have freedom of choice the moment you recognize that this thought that unwillingly came into your mind, right? You can choose it. It just came to you, right? At that moment when you recognize that, and by the way, many of us don't recognize it, and therefore we've abdicated our choice. But the Beinoni doesn't abdicate the choice, because at the moment recognizes that that's not something I want in my head, because that will be a stain on my soul. That is an evil thought. Again, whatever it is, and we'll get into an example of that in a moment. And therefore pushes it away, thrusts it away with two hands. Now, the Alter Rebbe says this is not just between the individual and God. In other words, if if a negative thought comes into your mind that is not about, and if you have a negative thought that comes into your mind, and it's between you and God, whatever, a thought of pigging out on food. Excuse the expression. The thought of thinking of someone in an illicit way, right? Whatever. So push it away with two hands. Now the Alter Rebbe says this is also not just between you and God, but between you and your fellow. Ben Adam l'chaveru, between you and your fellow and your friend. Now, what does it mean, friend, over here? Well, it's we're not talking about Hitler here. We're not talking about Stalin. We're not talking about real evil people, but your community member type of thing, right? Go to synagogue, and there's a guy there. I'm giving this as the example. The Alter Rebbe is not giving this example. I am, right? That you have in your heart animosity towards that person, maybe even hatred, maybe you're jealous, anger, a grudge that you have against that individual. The Beinoni, in other words, it's there for whatever reason. It's irrelevant, right? We know that these things happen, right? Whoever's lived life has had probably a jealousy here or there, has had some anger or animosity towards another individual, right? In your synagogue. Again, I'm giving this as by way of example. So the Beinoni will refuse to think that feeling of jealousy, that anger, even though it lurks in the heart, but will not give it playtime in the thoughts, will not voluntarily allow it to be played, but pushed away. It'll come to the mind when you see that person, you see the way that they're acting and whatever, and the Beinoni will actually do the contrary, prevail over and dominate the feelings of the heart, and do the exact opposite of what the heart's desire is. The heart's desire, and you know what this person will do? Will bestow loving kindness on this person. Not just loving kindness, but it actually will display a disproportionate amount of love to this person that you've suffered personally from. That's what the Beinoni will do, right? Without being provoked into anger or any kind of revenge or anything like that. This is what the Beinoni will do. And others repay an offender with favors. Where do we learn this from? The Zohar says we learn it from Joseph, the way he conducted himself with his brothers. They brought upon a lot of suffering upon him, and he paid them back with kindness and favors. They did. As Joseph said, God thought this for good, therefore I'm going to bestow goodness upon you. Your intent was your intent. That's between you and God, and you got to fix that, right? But me, I'm going to bestow goodness upon you because God had this in mind for good and for good only. That's a very powerful teaching. That's a very powerful idea that can imagine someone who makes you suffer. Again, we're giving the example, you're in your synagogue, you're in your Chabad house, and there's someone there that is just, has a snide comment towards you, does that, this, and a lot of negative stuff. But it's your fellow, in the sense that it's, it's your fellow Jew. The Beinoni will not allow that negativity to give any playtime. On the contrary, will do a disproportionate manner of favor and kindness towards that individual, which is a powerful idea. That's a Beinoni, someone who has got mastery over behavior, thought, speech, and action. And here we're talking specifically about in the thought area, where it's the most difficult, because involuntary negative and evil thoughts come into our head of, again, jealousy, anger, animosity, hatred, all those things. And we have the capability. We can abdicate our choice, and often we do. Or we could recognize that I have a choice right now. I'm not going to play that broken record in my head of that negative, evil thought. And I'm going to replace it with something positive, and not just positive, but even more so. That is a powerful idea for all of us, for me, and for you, to really take heed of and bring it into our lives and to live with it. That's something truly to live with. All right, folks, we will continue our conversation, continue our learning, continue our Farbringen. In tomorrow's class, I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day.